seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Lots to talk about. Let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from the Jennifer and Wendy Show on the Big 550 KTRS. Down the dial, we find Jason Rosenbaum, who is a political correspondent for St. Louis Public Radio, sitting in for Bill McClellan, who's taking the week off. From the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com, Joe Holleman, reporter and columnist. And from the St. Louis American, editor and columnist Alvin Reid. Hey, we want to say thank you very much to Linda Layton, great local artist who provided the beautiful artwork adorning the mantle behind me on the set here at 9PBS. Great work, and if you want to see more, go to LLLartwork.com. Well, Jason, it's been too long. Welcome back. Good to see you.
It's great to be back.
Local St. Louis Public Radio, along with the Riverfront Times, ran a piece this week by Eric Berger, who took a look at funding for possible refurbishments at Busch Stadium. And in this story, Bill DeWitt III, president of the team, said that down the line, there may be the possibility of getting public assistance to renovate Busch Stadium. Could be in the same league as Kansas City, which is asking for about $500 million. In today's St. Louis Business Journal, he then says, oh no, it's way too premature to start talking about public assistance for this stadium. But overall, you know there's going to be public assistance for a refurbished Busch Stadium, right?
There's certainly going to be an ask, and especially if the Kansas City Royals asked, for example, the state legislature for hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it would be malpractice for the Cardinals not to do the same, especially if the legislature ends up passing that. And in fact, if I were the Royals, I would try to get the Cardinals to get state funds for the stadium, because there's no reason for a St. Louis legislator to vote for a Kansas City stadium, especially when Kansas City legislators were the most outspoken critics of that failed Riverfront Stadium for the NFL. But I will just say this. If they ask for local assistance, I do think St. Louis SC, the soccer team, has set a precedent to where that it's a largely privately funded stadium. I know it's not 100% private. And people are going to be like, hey, the soccer team can do this. Why can't the Cardinals?
Well, two things. One, I think the Kansas City area said we're pretty much fed up on this, giving these billionaire folk, you know, any kind of money. Even locally, well, I think we would come to the same decision that Kansas City did. Two, this is a really poor time for the Cardinals to ask for money because people are disenchanted with the Cardinals because they don't spend a lot of money on the team. And the only reason that the state legislature would try to help out the Royals because they don't give two shakes of a lamb's tail about the Royals. What does Kansas City have that we don't have? They have the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs want that whole area there to themselves. They want the Royals gone, but they can't work out this deal. So the state will jump in because they love the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, and the governor does too. And their thinking is, let's get the Royals out of there because the Chiefs want the Royals out of there.
But don't you think the rejection of the voters on that side of the state recently had something to do, just even in small part, with Enos Stanley Kroenke and what he did on the West Coast in terms of, hey, he's one billionaire who can do it, so all of them can get in line?
Well, it seemed like they made this ask, and like within a month when they, you know, this was going to go to the ballot, they said it's not going to pass. They started, you know, doing their numbers crunching, and they said, like, this is not going to pass. So they knew it, the people knew it, and it happened. So I think the same thing would happen.
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll say, 2 weeks ago, this very question came up just with the Kansas City. And I hope no one's disappointed, but I have not changed my mind. I'll say now what I said then. I don't believe in public money for private major league sports teams, period.
I agree with you overall, but the St. Louis Cardinals are saying that since they opened the stadium in 2006, they've paid $560 million in taxes. They do bring, what, 3 million visitors, many of them 35% from out of town to downtown St. Louis. Anytime you Google search St. Louis, I mean, the Cardinals are the only thing that really put us on the national map. There's nothing else quite like the Cardinals, and they are generally beloved. I mean, we funded improvements at the Arch. And not the federal government. Locally, we spent local tax dollars to do that. We also did the same thing for the NGA. We forgave them their earnings tax.
Those are federal, but those are owned by the government.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's not a sports team.
And we're like the only city in the country that subsidizes the federal government. And if you think we're not going to subsidize the beloved St. Louis Cardinals,
Not going to happen, Charlie. People are start. They're out of that game now.
But I mean, I don't think the arch tax passed by that much in St. Louis County for that exact reason, because people were uncomfortable with the idea of a local money going to a federal park.
But
so
it did.
I know it passed, but I think that we've seen, like, St. Louis County didn't want anything to do with the failed Rams stadium or the soccer stadium. And I don't know, will there be an ask for St. Louis County to pay for these St. Louis Cardinals stadium? Because a lot of people from the county go there.
So it definitely wouldn't pass if it was just the city itself. It just wouldn't pass.
Alvin, I want to ask you about, well, a sad thing, but also a great moment when we paid homage to Whitey Herzog, longtime Cardinal manager who died this week, a Hall of Famer. And in fact, you wrote a book, Whitey's Boys, back in, what, 1982 with Rob Raines.
Yep. It was about the St. Louis Cardinals team of 1982. Thank you, Rob, for allowing me to, be co-author of that book. And just to, I got to spend time with Whitey Herzog at book signings and I think a couple of golf tournaments. And it was just so cool to be able to talk baseball with Whitey Herzog. And Whitey Herzog kind of believed in the same kind of baseball that I still do. And it was just, he was just incredibly brilliant when it came to baseball, but he was also incredibly brilliant when it came to, like, life and young men. And we were watching a playoff game at a book signing when Scott Rowland hurt his shoulder. They were playing the Arizona Diamondbacks. He ran to the first baseman. And he said, like, this is what you get when you're, exercising all the time and you need to get out and drink a beer and eat a steak. And, and Scott Rowland, like, rolling around on the field. He said, like, he didn't pull any punches. So he was a great man. He was an honest man, and he was a kind man. And I was really sad when he passed away.
They say your favorite teams are the ones when you're a kid, but my favorite teams, and I was already an adult, were the 1980s Cardinals under Whitey Herzog. Whitey ball was the most entertaining baseball that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm glad to see at least glimpses of Major League Baseball getting back to stealing bases, taking extra bases, playing good defense. I just thought those teams, Willie McGee, Ozzie Smith, Tommy Herr, that whole group of people, it was just fun baseball to watch those guys run around the bases, drive the other team crazy. I remember one year not having a single player who hit more than 18 home runs, George Hendrick.
Right.
And they still scored more runs than anybody in baseball.
Won the World Series.
Absolutely fun. Absolutely.
I ran into him at Dan Farrell's retirement party last fall. And I said to him, Whitey, because I worked at KMOX, I interviewed you 10 times or so. And I said, you always filibustered. You never let me get another question in. And he said, that's exactly what I learned from Casey Stengel. Ask him how long the interview is going to be, and after the first question, talk for that length.
That is fantastic. Well, and we talked to Jim Buffero this morning about the fact that Whitey Ball took place against the backdrop of St. Louis in the 80s. And what a booming, bustling time. It's a chicken or the egg question, I guess, but it was just a really fun time to be downtown and to be a Cardinals fan, thanks to him.
Now, we also lost a great St. Louisan, a University City product, Kenny Holtzman, who actually had more victories as a pitcher than Sandy Koufax.
He did. On the list of Jewish Major League Baseball players, Kenny Holtzman had 2 or 3 more wins than Sandy Koufax. Went to U City, then went to the University of Illinois. Got signed by the Cubs, played for a few other teams. Obviously, the bright spot of his career was he was on all 3 of the Oakland Athletics when they won 3 world championships in a row back in the 70s. And quite a pitcher. I mean, an excellent, or very good at least, made a couple of all-star teams and moved back to St. Louis and quietly worked for the J and was active in the Jewish community, but pretty quiet. Not a lot of interviews and so on, and he passed away on Sunday.
Well, one of the great.
Right, and he was an outstanding pitcher. I mean, he was really good.
Yeah.
And this is before, you know, you had an MLB network and all the internet and all that. I think people really don't
realize.
Don't realize because
Yeah.
he didn't play here. But he was really good. And his son struck me out when I was a son.
That's your claim to fame.
That was not an easy feat.
It was easier than you.
Hey, Wendy Wiese, I want to ask you, it turns out Josh Hawley, Republican senator from, actually senior senator from the state of Missouri, got a $5,000 political contribution from the Teamsters. Now, this is a little bit unusual because organized labor almost always supports the Democrats. But in this case, there was Hawley with the Teamsters when they were, I guess, concerned with either Anheuser-Busch or Graybar. And he's also stood with the UAW in Wentzville. So what do you make of this?
Well, we were telling Joe Holleman this week during our interview that he does have a reputation for being somewhat politically prescient, I think Josh Hawley does. And not only has he been working the picket lines, he was he a co-sponsor or did he sign off on the legislation that Senator Bernie Sanders
That's right.
You know, in terms of the railroad workers and getting extra benefits for them. So he clearly sees something, and while $5,000 doesn't seem to be a lot of money, it's more symbolic, I think, than the dollar amount.
Yeah, I will just note that, like, the vast majority of labor unions have either endorsed Lucas Kunce, and I think most of them have endorsed Lucas Kunce, but, you know, it's also should be noted that Carla May, who is also in the race but hasn't raised as much money, she's a longtime CWA, Communication Workers of America official, and CWA has supported her. You know, I think it's interesting, and I think Hawley may be trying to cultivate union support because there is a decent percentage of union members who may disagree with him. For example, in 2016, he said he was for right to work,
right.
Which is shorthand for a law that would bar employers and unions from requiring workers to pay dues as a condition of employment. But, you know, Eric Greitens supported right to work too, and it's estimated that like 30, 40, 50% of some unions voted for him because they were also in favor, or they were against gun control and they were anti-abortion.
Well, and I think that's where Hawley has read the room correctly, and I think a lot of candidates have, starting going back to Ronald Reagan. And you talk about, and indeed, and I've written a number of stories about the endorsements that Lucas Kunce has received from labor unions. The thing is you take the head of a labor union has one vote. That guy working on the telephone line in the electricians union also has one vote. So you can look at the endorsements from the union, and I think what Hawley has done is said, that's okay. The endorsements are going to, most of the endorsements are going to go to my opponent. But what about the votes from all the members? So I think when Hawley shows up at picket lines, he's going to get a few votes that most people would say, well, that union is endorsing Lucas Kunce.
Why isn't Lucas Kunce at Graybar or in Wentzville?
I think he has gone.
Yeah, he was in Wentzville.
Where is he on Coldwater Creek? Why isn't his name in the paper? Why is he like the greatest mystery in the
because
state?
that election is under the radar now because that primary between May and Kunce is not as nasty as the race we're about to talk about, and there's also 1,000 other Republican primaries.
Hawley is getting his name in the paper. Lucas Kunce is living in passionate anonymity. Nobody knows the guy.
I don't think that's true.
But
I don't think his race his race is not going to be top of mind until November. Right. So that's why he's not getting a lot of attention.
You just said he wasn't in Wentzville, and he was at Wentzville. And he has done union events. He's been doing them for the last 2 years. Because keep in mind, he's been running for this office for 2.5 years. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, he's there. Just like I said, but right now he's going to win the primary and then he's going to run against
I think both of them are waiting for everything to quiet down after the August primaries. Yeah. Then, so let's call a date August 15th or September 1st. Then you're going to see the Hawley and Kunce camps come out firing big guns.
Right. Now, Joe, you wrote this week about Cori Busch and Wesley Bell. Wesley Bell, the St. Louis County prosecutor, Cori Busch, the incumbent congresswoman. They're going to face each other in the Democratic primary this summer, but he is really out. I guess he's getting more political contributions than she is.
Indeed. And, you know, before he entered the race, her campaign was having money problems. She's been under fire for having her husband on the payroll. She also has had debt, which is sort of unusual when your campaign fund is in negative numbers. And in mid-2023, that was the case. And so Wesley Bell is out running against her. And what he has going for him in the raising of money is October 7th in the Israeli-Hamas-Palestine thing. And there is, if reports from national media believe, tens of millions of dollars being made available by pro-Israel groups to fund candidates that they believe are unfriendly to Israel. And Cori Busch is high on that list. Jamal Bowman is another one who has come up with an opponent. And Jewish organizations have endorsed challengers for the first time in their life where they didn't endorse an incumbent Democrat. So I think if it comes down to a money race, and again, I'm not saying about the actual results of the ballot race, but when it comes down to the money race, I think Cori Busch will be hard-pressed to raise more money than Wesley.
No, I agree with that, but I also don't think that Israel-Gaza is going to be as determinative in this race as people think. I mean, I've asked Cori Busch and Wesley Bell that question, and they said, no, this isn't the top issue that a key group of people in the 1st District care about, and that key group of people is African-American voters. African-American voters is going to decide this election because the 1st District is majority African-American.
Are you saying Wesley Bell can't get African-American voters?
No, that's my point. The only way he's going to win is if he can cut into Cori Busch's margins that she gained in 2022. And if he can't do that, he loses automatically.
And if he he wins automatically.
No, I mean, he would have a very good chance of winning if he could, like, if for example, he ties the black vote or he wins the black vote, I think he has a good chance.
I know Republicans who have donated to Wesley Bell because they feel so strongly about Cori Busch's position.
Go ahead.
On Israel. No. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's Donnybrook.
Right. Not patty cake.
Aren't we supposed to interrupt each other?
Not patty cake. So I do think the money is going to help him get that message to people who might be listening.
But the day that he announced he was going to run was the day that everybody knew he was going to raise more money than Cori Busch did.
Right.
So their strategy has to be not to outraise, but to outvote, i.e. get more people out to support Cori Busch. It's all going to come down to that. But I don't think so. The 1st Congressional District, I agree with Jason. He could have $1 billion, but that's not going to find any new voters. He's got to win over some people who might not ordinarily vote for him.
And I'm just saying, money doesn't hurt in that
Wesley
regard,
Bell has
even though I get it.
Black voters that voted for Cori Busch last time that they shouldn't vote for her this time. And again, yes, I understand that, like, groups that are supportive and antagonistic to Israel are going to fund the respective campaigns, both directly and indirectly. But when it comes to issues that black voters care about, Israel-Gaza is probably way low on the list.
But that's the only reason he's in this race.
Well, it's the only reason
that he entered the race.
He would tell you that it's not going to be the reason why people vote for him or against him in the black community.
I think what's happening is we're picking what tea leaves we want to read, and what we're trying to do is predict who's going to show up and who's going to vote which way, and we don't know that.
I just think
my only comment is that when it comes time to mount a campaign, Wesley Bell right now is better funded than Cori Busch.
Very well.
Totally agree.
Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio political correspondent. I want to ask you about red light cameras. The Supreme Court shot them down thanks to some successful plaintiffs back in the day. But
it wasn't me. I mean, I got my red light camera thrown out because I was turning right on red. And I stopped.
Well, it was me. I was one of the plaintiffs.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was, yes.
Congratulations.
Well, it could be all over now that the city of St. Louis is sending to the mayor a measure which, if she signs, will bring red light cameras back. Are the streets going to be safer?
I think that there's a couple of philosophical issues that I think that the St. Louis elected officials need to think about. Number one, you are effectively turning over a public service, which is traffic enforcement, to a private vendor. And I don't know who the private vendor is going to be, but I know in the past they've been very well politically connected. I think the RFT wrote in the 2000s how Joyce Abusi represented red light camera companies, and you know, Joyce Abusi is very good at what she does, and there are red light cameras everywhere. So that's number one. And I think that a lot of progressives don't like the privatization of governmental entities. But number two, and I think that this is also important given that, you know, the Ferguson protests and what happened after that with trying to curtail fines and fees for municipalities was such a big policy endeavor. Like, red light cameras are going to be a more ruthlessly effective way to fine people. Maybe they deserve it for running a red light, but you can't like be agitating against municipalities fining people for traffic violations and then put in something that's going to fine lots of people in a ruthlessly efficient way.
But Jason, the progressives on the Board of Aldermen are the ones who are now responsible for that privatization.
That's my point.
Okay.
And I think that like they need to maybe do some soul searching about whether they're being consistent if they thought that the big policy thing from Ferguson was about curbing municipal fines, which I don't think it was.
That was if a human being pulled you over because a human being was allegedly corrupt. Well, but this will be the camera, and as football coaches say all the time, the camera never lies, right, Alvin?
Yeah, but the Constitution stands against this nonsense.
And right out of the gate, they say, you know, that they know that the Constitution, that question has been answered.
It has not. It won't be answered until I sue, and then the city will be spending more money handling all these lawsuits, and they are bringing it on the red light
And I think
camera.
a good time for soul searching amongst progressives would be once they have painted themselves into the philosophical corner that they have, which is we don't want to hire more police. We don't want a police state. Oh, but we really don't like it when a mother and a daughter get hit by somebody running a red light. So now you're in a position where, oh, I want the city to be safe, but I don't want to hire any police officers. So now they're back embracing one of the technologies that they were against before. And so that's what happens when you approach every subject with some rigid philosophical approach. And police were bad.
But
now cameras are good.
They've been trying to hire more police. Yeah, they've been. The attempts have been made. I am fine with red light cameras. We have got to get out front of this. And right now, additional police officers don't appear to be part of that.
If I'm driving around with an expired tag or no plates, how will the red light camera identify me?
I don't know, but I just got to make this addendum. There has to be a better way to challenge a red light camera ticket than where it was before. Because going into a municipal court in person, especially if you're a person that is an hourly employee, to say, hey, I turned right on red, I shouldn't be fined $100. Yeah, someone like me who's like a bougie middle-class person from Richmond Heights, it doesn't matter. But if you're a fast food worker who makes $25,000 a year, like, they need to find an online way to challenge the tickets.
That's a good point. Man, and there are going to be challenges to it. And when there are challenges, they go to a higher and higher court, and at some point they're going to say, like, this is unconstitutional. It's just you're not represented in a court because you got to challenge a machine.
Now, what they're saying is they're going to identify the driver. In the past, you know, they only identified the owner of the vehicle. But now they're going to somehow, with their cameras, they'll look through the tinted glass and identify the driver who probably has on
wearing a mask.
a mask,
Columbo.
sunglasses.
There was a Columbo episode that had a mask on.
All right, enough of Law and Order for right now. Our final topic, Wendy, we're going to Variety, the entertainment newspaper, reported yesterday that actor Robert Redford, the founder of the Sundance Film Festival, is going to shop the festival around. He wants cities to apply to be the host of it starting in the year 2027. This means a festival for moviegoers and producers and directors in January once a year. Can St. Louis pull off what Cleveland did when Cleveland got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Can St. Louis be the home of the world's most prestigious independent film festival?
I think anything could happen. And just, I mean, because I am civic-minded, I would like to volunteer as tribute to negotiate with Mr. Redford about bringing the film festival. I am a giver. I am a giver. I think anything can happen. I think anything can happen. I think he is very civic-minded. We need we need to work on our curb appeal right now. But I absolutely believe
30
it could
seconds
happen.
to go.
Yes, we should put forth a plan that says, what do you want, Mr. Redford, to bring it here? Double that. and take our chances and have it spread out between the city, the county, all the way out to wine country.
We could just be like Columbia and the True Falls Festival times 100, but I don't think we're going to get it.
I think there's no way we shouldn't go for it, and there's no way we're going to get it.
Isn't that a St. Louis attitude?
There's no place. There's no place for realism on this panel.
I give
You can't
us
bet here. You got to go across the river.
I give us a shot. Yeah.
All right. Let's see what the viewers had to say about last week's Donnie Bash episode. It was especially great seeing you all at Donnie Bash because it was fun to see everyone in person. I thought Alvin stole the show, and Sarah is a wonderful addition. If given a microphone, the question I would have asked was, these days, where does the Donnybrook cast eat after tapings? Because many years ago, when you would all go to King Louie's, I was your busboy. That was my first job. Hey, that's from Neil Salsick from The Voice on NBC. And a viewer. Thank you, Neil. I think the answer to that is Humphreys or Vito's or you name the place. I thought Donnie Bash was as lively as I've ever seen, with many pertinent and relevant comments, plus a lot of humor, with Wendy's jab about Bill being behind the wheel and Alvin's motto, St. Louis, nothing happened to me. It sounded more like Saturday Night Live on a good night. That from Glenn Curcio of St. Louis. Greg Rushing wrote, many from Southern Illinois do not like being dictated to by Chicago politics. For example, the redistricting of our legislative districts. I would have solved the problem years ago and simply given Mrs. O'Leary's cow another lantern or two. Mr. Rushing lives in Washington County. You can write us care of 9PBS. Don't forget the zip code 63108. We love those emails, donnybrook@9pbs.org, and on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Comment line 314-512-9094, and listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Well, thanks so much to Jason Rosenbaum, just a middle-class bougie from Richmond Heights, for joining us for this edition. Bill will be back next week. We hope you will too. See you in 7 days.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.